everybody, and welcome to Paranormal Portal Pieces. I'm your host, Brent Thomas. Thank you all for joining us. Thank you all for all of the support for this new channel, and I'm really excited to see the numbers grow as more and more of you are coming to check out these mini episodes. So today's episode is going to be a great one. This was a fantastic show that we did with Vic Cundiff of Dogman Encounters Radio, and the show itself went extra long. We had such a great conversation going. I think it was a 3-hour show by the end of the whole trip. But this specific segment was a part where we had kind of a question and answer going with Vic, where he was fielding questions not only from Don and myself, but from our listening audience as well. So it was a great time, great discussion. We hope you love it. Yeah, that's my encounter too, was just hearing a deep resonant growl that shook my body. And it was, I just couldn't turn around. I mean, I could have physically, I just couldn't emotionally, because I thought whatever made that noise is going to kill me. And it was the most terrified I've ever been in my life. And now listening to you talk about Dogman, maybe it was a Dogman. No,
now I'm just more terrified.
It's hard to know. We have another question from our chat. I'm trying to keep up with them. There's a lot of questions.
There's a lot of questions.
Well, Don, you've been watching.
One of the questions, and I believe you've kind of gone over this real quick, but somebody asks, do they communicate with us, and if they do they do it through telepathy? And I think you mentioned it, so if you could give a little bit more on that.
Well, anytime that an eyewitness reported communication happening, it's always been in the form of telepathy.
Okay.
Now, again, I don't know if there was anything to that, if it was maybe imagined, but it's reported enough where I think there is something to it. I don't think the eyewitnesses imagined it, but anytime an eyewitness has reported to me that they had some form of communication going on, it was always in the form of telepathy, never verbal speech.
Wow.
Oh, that's incredible.
Yeah, it is. Now, one of our chatters, Les, he's asking, what would be the odds of one or more dogmen living in close proximity of a city with a wooded subdivision? So you talked a little bit about that. What about in a city type subdivision setting?
Oh, these things are so bold that whereas you would think a Sasquatch would be kind of put off by that, but Sasquatch do come in and they do occupy areas pretty close to where we live, right on the fringes of where we live. But yeah, dogmen, they're so much more bold that they're a lot more likely to do that. They're not put off by the fact that people are here, people are there. No, they're going to go where they want to go, and they're going to do what they want to do, and that's all there is to it.
Wow.
No, I think that the chances of running into a cryptid on the fringes of a suburb or some other place like that, if you run into a cryptid, I think you're much more likely to run into a dogman than you would be a Sasquatch because of how bold they are. There are people have told me about instances where they've been inside the city limits of major metropolitan areas where dogmen came right in, broad daylight. They came into the developed areas. So how's that for bold?
Yeah. There are Sasquatch reports from Detroit and Chicago and the city. So yeah, it wouldn't surprise me at all if these things were that bold, because we know that Sasquatch have been reported to be as bold, if in that sense, of the doing what they will. Maybe we're talking about a rogue squatch or whatever, a loner, whatever that may be, but it certainly makes sense to me that dogmen would pretty much do what they want. So there is a story from Skinwalker Ranch. And I heard this years ago on Mr. Art Bell's show years ago. I think it was like 96 or 97. He was talking to some people who were, investigating Skinwalker Ranch. And they said that they were out there on a hillock one night and they had a camera and a telescope. And I don't remember if it was infrared or if it was FLIR. But, so anyhow. But they said that they saw a portal open up and what they believe to be a dogman come out. Now, this is leading up to the question. One of our chatters, Titan, he's asking, does Vic suppose there are any supernatural elements to Dogman?
If you do this for any period of time, you're going to bounce back and forth from, at one point, being convinced that they are supernatural in origin to being convinced that they must be flesh and blood. To illustrate my point, if they're supernatural, then why are they seen on a regular basis eating rotting carcasses, roadkill carcasses on the side of the road, drinking stagnant water out of nasty ponds, showing that females must be fecund? Seeing females moving around, dog women, I guess you could call them, moving around with pups. So if they're supernatural, why would people report that? Credible eyewitnesses report that. Then on the other hand, if they were flesh and blood, why are so many reputable, credible eyewitnesses reporting seeing them doing things that point soundly towards them being supernatural in origin? So you bounce back and forth from one moment to the next, being convinced that they are flesh and blood to being convinced that they're not. So I can't really answer that question for you. I don't know. All I can do is guess on that.
Sure. Yeah. I think that's fair enough too. But the same thing would be true. When I first started doing the show, I was sure that Bigfoot was this hominid. It was just a hominid that had somehow evaded us. But through the years, reading stories, talking to people that have witnessed things firsthand, I gotta think, can they all be wrong? Can they all be telling me just a bunch of bunk? Well, I suppose it's possible, but just in talking to people and what they've witnessed, I've just come to the point where I have at least an open mind for the idea, which is a big stretch for me because, I tend to be a logical person in many regards. And it's, some of that stuff is really hard to get your head around. But I've got to tell you that I'm kind of in the same place where I don't know for sure, but at least I think anything is possible.
Oh, no, I agree.
Wow. It's so far I've just been like, literally on the edge of my seat because, we hear so many things about, dogmen and how aggressive they are. And, we get this picture of this violent, snarling, blood dripping, fangy, creature. But you've pointed out that in the reports you've had 4 out of the thousands you've gotten that have reported attacks. Has there ever been bodies found that were possibly associated with a dogman attack that ended in the loss of life?
Yes, there have been. Most people who follow the dogman phenomenon, they know about the supposed murders that took place in the LBL, land between the lakes, right there at the border of Kentucky and Tennessee. Well, yeah, over the years, I've kind of changed my tune from doubting the legitimacy of those to being pretty much convinced that really did happen. But yeah, there was an instance, if you don't know what happened down there or supposedly happened, there was a family who was camping out in the LBL in this RV. And it would appear that a dog man attacked and killed the husband, the wife who was there, the son, and there was also a daughter. The daughter was found in a tree. Her remains, that is, were found in this tree. But that happened, and then later on, years later, there was a bow hunter who apparently was killed and then dragged off miles away from his tent.
Wow.
But yeah, those two incidents, for a long time, I thought it was just something that someone made up. But as time has gone by, after talking with certain people, yeah, I do believe that those actually did happen.
Wow.
Yeah, that's absolutely terrifying. And there wouldn't be a thing you could do.
No.
We'd have absolutely no without even firearms. Now that's another point, Vic, that I wanted to talk with you is the stories upon stories upon stories of people shooting these things and surely shooting them. Like they can see where the bullet impacted, but it doesn't seem to phase them. And what is that all about? I mean, I don't believe they're bulletproof, but are they just that hard to kill, or what's going on?
That's a really good question. I mean, I've spoken with eyewitnesses, credible eyewitnesses, who have talked about, well, I guess one eyewitness at least, who talked about shooting one with a 45-70 more than once,
Wow.
and that didn't get the job done. So, yeah, it really does make you wonder, what does it take? And if that's the case, if there are so many instances where people have fired on these things, people who don't tend to be the kind of person to miss, if you know what I mean,
Yeah.
with formidable weaponry, and that still didn't take the Dogman down, that does make you wonder, okay, well, are they ethereal in nature after all? Because a flesh and blood entity, I don't care if you think they have some kind of funky reinforced rib cage or any of the other ideas I've seen floated around there. No, they don't have some kind of Kevlar reinforced rib cages because they're genetically engineered monsters that the government set loose. They might be genetically engineered. Some might be genetically engineered, but yeah, it's just impossible to explain away how so many people could fire on these things with formidable weaponry and not take them down. I don't know what's behind that. I don't know how to explain that unless they are supernatural in origins. I don't know. That's a tough one.
Yeah, I wrestle with that one too, because I mean, I've shot a bunch. I've shot a lot of different caliber, and if it's going to go through a like a 4x4 oak post, I can't imagine that there's any body that would resist that same round, or any amount of bone, And I suppose, I know like elephant guns are a huge gun, but if you've got a real full metal jacket round, and it's fired from a decent caliber, it should be tearing through everything physical. But yeah, that just always bothered me because. How?
How
How is that happening? What's going on? Because I don't get it. Now, you hear the same reports about people shooting Bigfoot allegedly, and in several reports that I've heard from these claims, they're dropping these animals or these beings. I don't want to call them animals because I don't want to be degrading or whatever. But not so for the Dogman, and that just really perplexes me. But again, I know we don't have an answer, but just it's such a curious thing. I don't know. We got another.
It is.
Yeah. Let's see. What is this question? Does Vic think? What does Vic think about the popping sound that occurs during some encounters? And I think what the person's referring to is people that have seen them quadrupedally and then moving to bipedally. There's claims of like a popping sound.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that. After one of the episodes where the eyewitness talked about witnessing that, I think it was the day after, or maybe 2 days after that episode aired, that a surgeon contacted me, reached out to me, and he talked about how if they have a hip structure that's basically designed to allow them to ambulate both quadrupedally and bipedally, that it would make sense that as the hip joint's realigning itself, to transition from one to the other, that you would hear that popping sound. Now, I'm just a layman. I don't know how accurate that postulation is. I don't know if there really is something to that. All I can tell you is that someone who appeared to be a physician contacted me and told me that would make sense. So, gosh, that's out of my...
Yeah,
that's out of my clubhouse. I couldn't really tell you for sure any more than that about that.
right.
That makes sense though, because me just getting out of bed sounds like that, I'm sure. I mean, it's like, you go from that totally rested position to having to get up and your hip pops, your shoulder pops, your neck pops. I can relate. Yeah. Standing up is a hard thing to do in the morning, but yeah.
you just transition from prone position to bipedal.
Yeah.
And it's full of noise.
That's right. Snap, crackle, and pop. Oh, I don't need to eat. I've already had breakfast.
All right. But we've got a lot of questions. I don't think I'm hitting even half of them. They're flying by.
Well,
but
here's an interesting one. Carlton sent this in, Pharmacy. He says, will Vic talk about the Fed agents that showed up on a few cases with special electronic equipment?
Well, anyone who listened to the episode 190, where Brandon Close came on and talked about that, I think he came back for episode 191 also and talked about that. But you know as much about that as I do. The feds, some alphabet letter team showed up the next day after he contacted his local sheriff and told him about this dogman problem that he had on his property in rural New York State. And yeah, the next day or maybe 2 days after that, this federal team showed up, and he says that they had this dish that could emit some kind of a strong sonic pulse that was basically like a hopped up dog whistle in effect. And they think that drove the dogman off. I don't really know any more than that about what happened or what supposedly happened or any more than any of you who listened to that episode. So
sure.
I don't really have anything more for you on that.
Hey, everybody. Thanks so much for checking out this episode. We hope you enjoyed it. And please, by all means, head over to youtube.com/paranormalportal to watch the full-length video. I know you'd love that whole episode, but this is certainly a wonderful part of it. And thank you all so much for the support and encouragement. And thank you for helping to spread the word about the Paranormal Portal. And hope to catch you on some more of these. But please, if you wouldn't mind, get subscribed and hit the bell so that you get notified every time we do a new video. There should be new videos coming out Tuesdays and Thursdays every week. So hope you'll check those out and continue to check out our normal Paranormal Portal channel for the full-length versions of all these episodes that you're watching here. Thank you very much, guys, and hope to see you soon.